Okay, go ahead.
All right, Dalit. We finished the Indian of the Orange Soiv and the Tzimtzum Reshimu. Now we're starting on the Kabbalah. Now, the Yesh Lahavim B'chinas HaKabbalah שנמשך מבחינת הרשימו הנ"ל דרך פרט, ותחילה יש להבן בו בעניין כללוסי, שהוא מבחינת ההיפך ממש מבחינת הרשימו הנ"ל. כי הנה הנקודה מיירה ההלם והסתלקוס הכל עד שלא נשאר רק נקודה אחת, וגם נקודה רשם זה מיירה מבחינת הדר ההתפשטות למטה, דווקא. דהיינו, עניין הדר המשכה וההתגלוס לערך ורכב כתורת היוד, כתורת היוד שאין בו תורך וחלל כולו. כידוע, והנה בעניין צמצום שלו מלמעלה, דהיינו מה שנשאר מבחינת נקודה לבד, יוכל להיות שיהיה מזה להיפך. It could be that really, it could be the opposite from this. מפני שמחמד זה יוכל בו הכל בקיצור ורמז כהגבנה. ואדרבה, just opposite. זהו עיקר סיבס כל גילוי השפעה כנ"ל, אבל מה שמנקודה זו מיירה הדר ההתפשטות לגמרי למטה, לכאורה זה ודאי נקרא צמצום גמור. means כפשוטו. ואמיתי, להעלים ולהסתיר לבלתי יובא אוי למטה. So it appears that the fact that the Rishimu is totally into itself, and really the Rishimu does not spread. So it would seem it's a real symptom. ואם כן, איך יומשך מנקודה זו היפוכו ממש the opposite, שהוא בחינת המשוך והתפשטות הקו, that the whole thing of the kav is the Indian of התפשטות. Like it says in various places in Kabbalah, that the whole thing of the line is the fact that it goes up and down. You know, the Hitbonenut is the main Indian of the kav.
Right.
אך הנה ידוע שבאמס הנקודה והקו אינם בית הפוכה. Not really בית הפוכה. שהרי הקו נמשך מן הנקודה. Since the kav actually comes out from the nekuda. ומחיבור נקודס יחד nice kav, and geometrically, now he's giving this thing of like Nakuda and Kav and Shetach and Eirech and Rechav and all these things are basically geometric mashalim.
Right.
And this is like the thing, you know, there's by the Hermetics they have, and in some of these things they have what they call the mystical geometry.
Right.
And they have all kinds of crazy mishigases, you know, with lots of gematria. You know, gematria means geometry, basically.
Right.
Gematria really means not geometry. Geometry comes from gematria.
Right.
But the real upper geometry is the Indian of, that's the real Indian of an Nakuda, is not dafka in a shape, but the whole Indian of an Nakuda is that it's built in Pasha. And
right.
And however, though, you can get from the downstairs geometrical shapes, you know, like a circle with a line coming down and all that business.
Right.
You know, they represent like a marshal on an upper thing.
Right.
And one of the things that you can see from downstairs, Nakudos, is you see that a line is made out of dots. As a matter of fact, in geometry, the whole definition of a line is the shortest distance between two dots.
Right.
So a dot represents a position, that's the position, which the whole thing about a position is that that's the position. Dafka, that's the position. Means it's not in Pasha.
Right.
And a line is Dafka, the distance between two positions.
Right.
From one position to another position. So we see that a line is actually made up from dots, even in physical geometry. Right. That it's not that a nakuda is opposite from a kav in terms of being actually like an antagonistic opposition to it, but rather in the fact that it's a hiyuli. Ukmo kol pchinas hiyuli or chaymer pashut she'af al pi shehu be'eder et pashtus dafka ein zeh rechi klal. That the whole thing of a hiyuli, like we learned over there in the previous chapters, so for instance like a talent or a koyach hatnua or something like that, we learned that it's really not mitpashet into the actual thing. The actual talent is not mitpashet. That's why it stays the same like it was before. In other words, like a guy who wrote a song, his talent did not decrease.
Right.
And not only that, even though you can see the talent from the song, like you say, wow, this guy is really talented.
Right.
But really, the talent didn't go into the song. The talent is a talent that's inside of itself. It's a thing that's inside of itself.
Right.
And this is the general thing of a hiyuli, that a hiyuli is a thing which is not mitpashet. But nonetheless, the hitpashtus comes dafka from the hiyuli. Like the koyach hatnua, and the things that, like, dead dogs don't bark and stuff like that.
Right.
Even though the soul doesn't really go into the tnuah, and yet the tnuah is mitpashet from the soul to the point that it's a simon on it.
Right.
And you can see by the fact that this thing is just lying there, and this is something that even a chicken can understand. Like we say, a chicken has a certain amount of understanding.
Right.
A chicken can tell between day and night. It can make the havchana, right?
Right.
So a chicken, like the whole thing, like you say, how do you know a chicken can understand? You say, well, because you see that's how a vulture can tell.
Right.
A vulture makes a havchana between life and death by movement.
Right.
And a vulture is a kind of bird. It's the same like a chicken. A vulture has about the same brain like a chicken. You see that this is something that really, you don't need to be a genius. As a matter of fact, a lot of these things here, you really don't need to be such a genius to understand. It's just that nobody ever pointed it out to anybody that, oh, hey, look at this.
Right.
That really, even a chicken can understand this, that the hitpashtus is coming from the etzem. And the hitpashtus of the koyach hatnua shows that this thing is alive. And yet, the actual soul is really a thing in itself. It's not really, the soul itself is beheaded pashtus. However, the thing that every hiyuli or chomer pashut, even though it's beheaded pashtus, and zechrechi klal, doesn't mean it cannot be mitpashet.
Right.
Rak mitzad etzem maus hiyuli. Just because of the fact that it's a hiyuli. Mipnei shehula mala adai mipchinas pashtus, v'lazeh lo yoad matzmusi. That's why. It's not because it cannot be mitpashet. Just the opposite. The whole pashtus does come from it. But the thing itself is a hiyuli, which even when there is a hitpashtus, it still remains higher than hitpashtus, really.
Right.
Like what we said, that even a chicken can understand this. While it's still included in the etzem, she'ena mitpashet l'achya, skulu, וכיולי של כוח התנועה בעצם טרם שמתפשט להניע, וכוח הצמיחה טרם שמתפשט להצמיח, וככוח השכל טרם שמתפשט להסיק, וכהי גבנה רבים בדיימן. There's many mashalim that you can say for this. הרי יובן שהדר התפשטות הזויס לא נקרא צמצום אמיתי מצד עצמי. It's not that it's actually a lack of ability to be mitpashet. Adrabah. Just the opposite. Hare hu koyach hayuli ha'atzmi, shemimeno nimtza kol bitgalus hitpashtus. It's dafka from this is what the hitpashtus is coming from.
Right.
Like we said, and a chicken can understand this. Ukahai gabna yuvan. It's in the same way it'll be understood. Lepinat nakuda lagabi akav. the Rishimu in relationship to the Kabbalah. Sheheder is pashtusa urak mitzad yosef b'chinas ha'atzmius shelamalim b'chinas pashtus adayin. והגם שבא על ידי צמצום הכל, עד שלא נשאר רק כנקודה אחת כנ"ל, אחרי זה עצמו מראה שכל בחינת העצמיוס כלול בה. It doesn't matter. Even though it comes from a tzimtzum, it means that the whole thing, like we explained, like the Gemara and the Mishnah, that the whole atzmos is included in the Rishimu.
Right.
And since it's really a point of the atzmius, the Rishimu, even though the Rishimu is after the tzimtzum, but the Rishimu is still part of the etzem. It means that the etzem was a metzamtzem itself into a point.
Right.
There's no pashtus to the outside yet. The Rishimu did not go outside at Ein Sof yet. It's the line that's going outside.
Right.
The Liyos can build him with Pashetis Lamata. It really does not, it didn't go out at Ein Sof at all. And here's a very good marshal for this. Ukamashal HaTalmid Lifnei Rabbi, the Eidi, the Torah Lamivla, that he is very busy with swallowing, in other words, with absorbing what the Rebbe is saying. That he totally, you try to talk to him, he will not talk to you. Like, you know, like the Rabbi Yossi Markel, for instance, when the Rebbe was talking, he would be totally entranced, like, you know, listening to the Rebbe. You know, the Chayzrim?
Right.
Or else, in general, a student is listening to the Rebbe. And his whole atzmus is like gone there, and he's becoming a whole nakuda. In other words, this is the whole inyan of das. Lo palit lashpil is ulosabit pashtus. If the next guy will ask him what's the Rebbe saying, they'll just shove him away. He'll say, get out of here. He won't even say get out of here. He won't even hear him, actually.
Right.
He's too busy listening to the Rebbe.
Right.
Achar Kabbalasi, but after he received, Adrabah, just the opposite. Mizeh hatzimtzum shahaya b'bchinas nekuda, hu shenimshach min kol hashpa v'yishpashus l'zalosa. That's why he can chazer the whole thing by heart.
Right.
Or not just a matter of, that's a thing of chazering by heart, but also the inyan of understanding it and giving an explanation to another guy works exactly the same way.
Right.
The fact that he listened to the teacher when his teacher was there, he listened to him so good that he mamish had nothing to do with anything outside of this, and became his whole being was metzumtzum away, and he was totally an akuda of just listening to his teacher. Not only was that not a tzimtzum, but adrabah, from this itself came the whole hashpah and it pashtu to downstairs.
Right.
וכמו שבוע במקום אחר, ומכל זה יובן שהקו הנמשך מן הנקודה הוא רק כמו בחינת התפשטות מן היולי העצמי. It's not an opposite, just the opposite. It's not an opposite. It's a source. The Rishimu is actually the source for the line. And the thing is that they show opposite in Yonim doesn't mean that they are actually opposites. Adraba, the fact that the point is built in Pashtus, this is what gives it the power to have the Pashtus of the Kav, because that's why it absorbs into itself the whole entire Ein Sof, like the student is absorbing from the Rebbe. Amna, Marsh, and Nimshach, so that's one Inyan. Now it's talking a new Inyan. That it's not two opposites, really. So now the next thing, Mash and Nimshach Finas Kov Katzer. This thing that it is coming out in a way of a Kov Katzer. So now we have to, there's several Inyanim in the Kav. In the Kav, in some places, you'll see that it calls it a Kov Katzer. And this Kov Katzer, later on, you'll see that he says that it's even before the Tehirut Atah. And it's called stima to call stimin still.
Right.
And it really is actually also really part of the Ein Sof. Even though it's after the Tzimtzum, it is part of the Ein Sof just like the Rishimu is.
Right.
Not only that, it's not a lesser thing than the Rishimu is, in the same way that the Rishimu is not a lesser thing than the Or Ein Sof is. But they're different
exactly
powers.
The same as the Rishimu, except that it's coming down.
Yeah, but it's not just that it's not just that. I'm talking about the level of power that it is.
Yeah.
It's not a lower level of power, really.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, in the way that basically sometimes it's explained backwards, but this explanation is that Or Ein Sof is basically Chesed of Ein Sof. The Koach HaPashtus is Chesed.
Right.
The Tzimtzum and Rishimu is Gvura of Ein Sof.
Right.
And the Kav is basically Tiferes of Ein Sof.
Right.
Which combines the two powers together into not an infinite, like Chesed means infinitely Chesed without any Tzimtzum to it.
Right.
And the Tzimtzum means an infinite Tzimtzum without any spreading to it. And Tiferes means a combination of the two of them.
Hold on. Let me flip the tape. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hold on for a minute. Where are we?
We're at...
Kav Kotzer.
Right.
Right, so this Kav Kotzer that they're talking about, that's the Etzem HaKav. That's
right.
The Kav itself. And that's called Stima de Kol Stimin. In other places, it says Stima de Kol Stimin. It says Les Machshava Tvisa Bei Klal. That's what it means, Stima de Kol Stimin.
Right. In other words, even the Machshava of Adam Kadmon is
right.
Not Tvisa Bach.
Which means not just the Machshava of Adam Kadmon.
Or even Tehira
doesn't mean the Chochma and Bina of Adam Kadmon, but even Keser, which means the Machshava Keduma.
Right.
Cannot grasp it, and it's Stima de Kol Stimin. This Kav Kotzer is still called Stima de Kol Stimin, and it's still considered Bach.
Right.
This Machshava Tvisa Bach. This Kav Kotzer is still part of the Bach.
Right.
In other places, you'll see that it says that Ak is called the Kav.
Right.
In various places in Kabbalah and Chassidus, you'll see that when they refer to the Kav, they're talking about Ak.
But that's the further extension. That's not this Kav Amida, I don't think.
Okay, but sometimes that's what it refers to. It's not the same thing. What do you mean?
I think when it says that the Ak is Kav, it's the Kav Chut that goes into the
yeah, whatever. But the basic thing is that
it's before Ak.
But still, nonetheless, it talks about sometimes when it says the Kav, it talks about Ak. Then other places it says that the Kav goes to the end of Atzilus.
Right.
Then other places, as a matter of fact, just recently, he said the whole Hishtalshelut of the Kabbalah.
Right.
Means that the Kabbalah goes all the way down to here.
Right.
So these are different in Yonim in the Kav. When it says that the Kav Kotzer means that the actual etzem of the Kav means it says that it just comes out.
Right.
And really it doesn't even reach to Ak. It just comes out and immediately it's misagdal into the Tihut Atah, which is Machshava Keduma.
Right.
And that's the Kav. And that's the Kav Kotzer.
Right.
הנה מבואר במקום אחר, שכמו שהניקוד הבחינה סיור לגבי הקו, כך הקו, מבחינת סיול, זה מבחינת ערך ורכב, זה שטח. A kav is like a hiyuli to a area. A plane. And in the same way that you make a line basically by having a point travel between two other points, in the same way you make an area by having a line travel between two lines.
Right.
להיות ידוע שהקו, גם שהוא בא בבחינת המשוכו והתפשטות מלמעלה למטה, אבל אינו עניין פרטיס אופן המשוכו כלל. That's why, in general, the actual inyan of the Kav Amida is dafka the Kav Kotzer. And usually, the Kav Amida means the actual Kav Kotzer, which measures everything else.
Right.
But in other places, I think you can see also that it would say, I haven't seen it, but you could say that the Medida is also the Kav. The actual measurement. And that's why it says that it goes down to the end of a tilus. That's the measurement.
Right.
Eino inyan protis oifn hamshocha klal, rak shema shenimsha ha'or milamala mata bilvad, shal adeze nimtza b'chinas malo mata ma'mishpi al mekabel. And over here, basically, he gives you a whole fantastic mashal, but he only gives you the nakuda of it. The mashal is like this: that in a teacher, like we said before, in a teacher, there's the whole original Orient Seif of his whole knowledge. Then,
right,
when he decides what he's going to teach, it all goes into a tzimtzum, and he says, what is he going to teach? Mathematics. And to him, this one word, like for instance, if we would tell somebody the kav, I'm going to teach you the kav. So I know when I say the kav, I already know the whole thing, what I'm going to give over.
Right.
But somebody who doesn't know the Inyan yet, a student of Makabel, it will mean nothing to him if you tell him Tzimtzum or Rishimu or something like that.
Right.
Or Zeranpit. Whereas the teacher has in this Nakuda the whole entire thing.
Right.
But then there's the thing of that in order to teach, he has to think, who is he going to teach it to?
Right.
And if he's going to teach the thing to, if he's going to teach mathematics to kindergarten kids, or if he's going to teach mathematics to high school kids, or he's going to teach mathematics to postgraduate mathematical students. It's all mathematics, and it's all included in the Nakuda, but then the Kav will have to come out different.
Right.
Now, this is not the Kav Kotzer. It's the Kav between the Mashpi and the Makabel, the actual measurement. That's also called the Kav. It's a Kav.
Right.
It's a Kav between 2 points. One point is the Mashpi and the other point is the Makabel.
Right.
But that's the length of the line. Means not only that, that's what's called the length.
Right.
Because actually in chapter 1, the Eirech, that's what the Eirech is.
Right.
The Eirech of Bina is the length of the explanation between the Mashpi and the Makabel.
Right.
That's the Kav. But that's not the Kav Kotzer. The Kav Amida means that there is no Makabel yet.
Right.
It's just that they told him that he's going to teach, like they hired him as a teacher. So there is a Hiyuli ability within himself to measure whoever it is. And to measure all kinds of lines, like later on he's going to explain that this is like a tape measure, that when you go to, when
like
you're going to go... Like a yardstick, right? A tape measure that a woman uses.
Right.
So like for instance, if I tell you, let's measure your house, You say, well, how am I going to measure it? So I say, well, here I got a measuring tape. It's 10 feet long, a 10 feet long measuring tape. So wait a minute, my house is more than 10 feet long. How are you going to measure all the things like the length of the house? I say, well, I want to measure everything. I want to measure the length of the house and the length of the windows and the height of the windows and the depth of the room and the height of the room and the yard. We're going to measure everything. And then from this, we'll be able to make a blueprint of your house and give a full description of your house. You say, but wait a minute, that's 10 feet is not enough. You say, wait, no, it's enough. Even if I had 1 inch, it's enough.
Right.
So all you have to have, the minute you have, as a matter of fact, the way that the scientists measure, the accurate measurements that they have now of a centimeter and stuff like that.
Right.
Is they measure it by the wavelength of krypton. You know what krypton is? Krypton is a gas.
Right.
It's a gas that when it's like a neon. When you have a krypton lamp, it puts out a sort of a greenish type of light from it.
Right.
And it's called krypton gas. And it has a specific wavelength. Krypton gas puts out a specific wavelength, but that wavelength is like a millionth of an inch or something like that.
Right.
And yet everything is measured by this thing that's a millionth of an inch.
Right.
Why? Because once you have any exact measurement, so then you can measure all the measurements with it.
Right.
So that, like, for instance, if you have, like you said, a yardstick, with a yardstick you can measure the distance from here to the moon.
Right.
And the same thing, this is like the yardstick, the kavamida inside of the teacher to measure the distance between the mashpia and the makabel. So he can
makabel.
Huh?
Of any makabel.
Any makabel. Yeah. It could be a makabel that's just mamish the same like him, in which case all you would need to give it over is a kaf kutzer. Or it can be like a little bit longer, like down to Ak, or down to Atzilus, or down to all the way to Asiya, or even all the way down to creatures that are almost like monkeys. And you can measure any kind of line with it.
Right.
Not only that, the line, in other words, in this kav of the teacher, it's a hiyuli for all the explanations.
Right.
Because the oirich of all the explanations comes from this kav.
Right.
Whatever explanation, in other words, this is the kav that will measure the length, the oirich of Bina, from up to down.
Right. So therefore it contains all possible explanations within itself.
Yeah, so since it contains all the different possible explanations, not only all the different lengths of explanations, but all the different types of explanations, so it means that it also contains all the rechavs.
Right.
And with this line, you can measure also the rechav.
Right.
Same thing like we said, that with the line, if I have a measuring stick, I can not only measure the length of your living room, I can measure the width of your living room too.
And the height.
And tell you what the shetach is. You say, wait a minute, how can you get a shetach out of a line? The yardstick does not have square feet in it. It only has long feet in it.
Right.
And yet you can measure also the height, and you can get volumes out of it.
Right.
So you can measure everything, including, yeah. Oh, yeah, no problem. You can measure, like, all the things that it said in Chapter 1, including the height.
Right.
Meaning that since you can measure the height, and the height is included in this line can go even higher than itself.
Right.
Because the height is included in it.
Right.
So the line can go backwards. You know, like you take a measuring stick, you can measure not only like the positive distance, you can measure the negative distance.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You can measure not like from your one wall to the other wall. You can measure from the wall to the outside of the house.
Right.
What's the negative distance? I mean, how far away are you from the house altogether?
Right.
So, and that's by just turning the line around to the other way. Instead of measuring to the east, you can measure to the west.
Right.
So that means that this line can really measure all the way up to the Atzmos.
Right.
And really, it is a power of the Atzmos. Not only that, in this line is included everything that's in the Rishimu.
Right.
That means that everything is included in the line. He can explain anything. Means it's not just he can explain only from this thing down, but he can explain the original stuff, the whole Oren Seif.
Right.
Is included in this line. Not only that, he can really explain even higher in the Oren Seif, like we said that there's higher in the Oren Seif. And that's really what the explanation is about. The explanation of Bina.
Right.
So, this is, through this thing that the line is only what is from up to down, that through this comes the Mila Mataf and Mashpia to the Makabel, but in the original line, it's not that there's an actual Makabel, it's just that he knows that there is a Makabel.
Right.
That means just that there is an up and a down.
Right.
Nothing more than that. You don't know where the down is. And therefore, you also don't know where the up is. The up doesn't start at the beginning of the line. The up starts before the Tzimtzum.
Right.
Because you don't know how far up you have to go into the actual original seichel in order to bring it down, because you don't know who you're giving it to.
Right.
So it's just a matter that there is an up and there's a down. That's all it is. Masha enken behiyulid in a kuda, en bo malo mata roish teich seif. Like when you say mathematics. Which mathematics? The calculus? No, it's just a point. There is no up and down. There's no beginning or end. There's no middle. Kolu keyadua. Zeo mash and vorbet time to call ikar eres a kav ein the rock liot filat malo matak mashid bayer. The whole thing of the kav is only to make up and down. There's the whole union of the kav. But marshal amas abinyan, like the measuring stick, she'eno ba begeder shetach abinyan atzma lo erech v'reichav, or even the length. You don't need a different length to measure 2 feet and a different length to measure 50 feet. You use the same tape measure. Rak sheba meidid kol medidas ayres kol medidas reichav. V'hu asma rak mo kavakatzer. Shekol kol eifna medidas shel erech v'reichav chulu. And by the way, the reason that physical geometry is like that is because it comes out of this.
Right.
It's included in the kav. These inyanim, that's why it came out that a physical kav is like that. Not only that, the kav is also a hiyuli for letters.
Right.
Base is made of 3 lines. You have 3 lines, you have a base. If you can make a line, if somebody knows how to make a line, you can teach them how to make a base. So this line includes all ideas in it, because it includes all the letters in it. And the letters can be put into all kinds of ideas. It's not that it actually comes out at all. Nothing happened. First he thought what he's going to teach mathematics, and then he thought, well, I'm going to teach it to somebody. That's it. That's all it is. And that's the line. And this includes all kinds of different amshachas because it's to any somebody.
Right.
A big somebody, you'll have a big reichav that you can give him over. A little somebody, you won't be able to give him such a big reichav, but you'll have to go through a much bigger oirach.
Right.
the Mida. Well, then Nikra Kavamida, and that's why it's called Kavamida. Well, then Meira Turosei, Shahu Kotzer Be'etzem, means it just comes out. V'hoilach v'nimshach milamayla lamata bilvad. It just comes out, and that's it. But it includes in this that it's mamshech everything that is hidden in the Rishimu. But it comes in the way of spreading downwards. And really it comes from the same power that the light comes, and the same power that the Tzimtzum comes.
Right.
Except that it doesn't come in a way of a full infinite light, but only in a way of a kav katzer. In other words, it's going to come, the explanation is going to come according to the Makabel.
Right.
Not according to how the Mashpia understands it. In the Mashpia, it's Archava Ershel Atzmos Mamish, is according to himself. Only according to the student. But nonetheless, like for instance this book that we're learning now, even though the book is according to us, but really it's coming from the original Harchavas Asmos of the Rebbe.
Right.
Even when it's in a kav. Aval im kol ze hayesh ba me'en bedugmas ora atzvus anelam adekuda. It has mamish like the actually the same thing like the ora atzvus which is in the Rishimu. Only that it comes in a way of spreading downwards. Alken ba tir kav, that's why it comes, and we call it like a line. And it's already in a way of a yuli for any kind of orange shefat, any kind of a kabel, and this is enough to understand.
Right.
So that was chapter 14.
Very good.
So, what else is new?